partner in private practice, $1 million house, you got 2 kids, you got a great husband. But I couldn't reconcile that divide between who I felt like, who I was internally and what I looked like externally.
Today's guest is Dr. Mel Thacker, a surgeon turned coach and TEDx speaker whose story reminds us that every rupture is an opportunity for reinvention.
I didn't recognize the fact that I'm worthy just because I exist, just because I breathe, and everyone is. And not only have awareness of it, but to believe it in your bones. It took loving myself unconditionally. And I was at the bottom of a hole emotionally. You have to find the place where you are okay, and from there you can start to slowly crawl your way out.
Mel speaks with rare honesty about injury, intuition, and integrity, and what it means to answer the questions so many of us in medicine avoid. Who am I really?
And so we should know everything. And it's a lot. It's a lot on our shoulders. That as opposed to, I don't know any more about my patient's body than they do. Once you find sufficiency, no matter what you're trying to do, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to change some sort of habit, you have to be sufficient and be like, I am okay. Nothing has gone wrong. Can't come from I have to. It has to come from I choose to.
So let's get into it. So I really love following your journey. You've helped me during this incredibly difficult transition period in my life where I'm fresh out of fellowship. I finished a year of practice in a kind of a corporate style of medicine, and I had so much moral injury. And I had moments where I was like, am I crazy or is this expectation crazy? And so finding you was like finding a lifeline during this big transitional time. I really want to know, how did you become who you are? So you're an inspiration to people like me. You're a surgeon. You've been on a TED Talk, which is so far out of the comfort zone for most physicians. And you deliver these really bold messages in such a beautiful way. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I have an unusual background. I come from some significant poverty. I have been on my own since I was 16, actually. I grew up in Wisconsin, and so I learned very quickly kind of how to take care of myself. And I like to say I'm like anti-culture. I was never acculturated. I didn't hear the word God until I think I was 10. So I had zero religion. That was not put on me. I had very little parenting. I was kind of like a feral cat. I just had to kind of figure out the world and make things mean what I wanted them to mean to serve me. And I found school to be extremely healing, and it made me feel really good to get the external validation, being very precocious and smart, and having all these teachers kind of telling you that you're really good at this and you're really smart. And so that was where I got my self-worth. And so then I very quickly attached my self-worth to external validation and made it my mission to become a doctor at the age of 13. Even though I had never seen a doctor, I don't have any memory of ever going to a doctor as a child to a pediatrician. I was never vaccinated, not because my single mother had any sort of opinions about vaccinations. It was purely out of neglect. My challenge in college was, where am I going to go during the summers? And so I studied abroad one summer. I lived with a friend. I lived with one of my best friends when I was 16 until I was kind of on my own ever since then.
I think it's pretty incredible. And you know, people never know what's behind the surface, right? The world sees this very successful, very bold, very powerful person. And I think it's all these different things that we go through in life that kind of prepare us for these experiences.
Yeah. And if you look at a lot of entrepreneurs, they have a history, many of them, of childhood trauma. Many healthcare workers do too. Not maybe as significant as mine was, but so then I go through college and I go to medical school, and I decide I'm going to go into ENT, and I go through all of the training. And it's like you're on this track of striving. It's so fun when you're a kid because you have future focus and you're looking at this goal, and all you want to do is get to the top of that mountain. And you tell yourself a story that as soon as you get there, it's all going to be rainbows and daisies and butterflies. But then you get there and it's like good for maybe a day. And then you're just like, okay, well, now I'm an adult with a job. And my next external validation turned into climbing the academic ladder, went into academics, and I was like, I can't do this. I need autonomy. So I pivoted into private practice, and then my external validation became money and making patients happy. And then 7 years into my career, I was like, I am dealing with some divide and internal suffering because I feel like a worthless child internally, but I have this external view of myself as like this badass surgeon mom who's a wife, who's got everything. If you look at my life on paper, you're like partner in private practice, $1 million house, beautiful, wonderful New England town. You got 2 kids, you got a great husband. But I couldn't reconcile that divide between who I felt like who I was internally and what I look like externally.
I think it's so powerful that you mentioned that, and so many of us can relate. And that's exactly where I was in that year of, complete turmoil. It's like you build this perfect life on paper. Everything fits the boxes of what you should be, but it doesn't feel internally like it's in alignment.
And I have anxiety now. I still have anxiety. I'm always dealing with it.
Same.
Yeah. But, and I'm still, like even being on this podcast and like having cameras on you is like so hard. But then I decided, and I was like, you know what? I have to dive into this. Let me just understand this. And I didn't actually decide that. My body took a hold of me and it was like, you have to do something. I started having panic attacks in the operating room. I started having severe anxiety. Like my entire human animal was like, don't go to work. And once my identity was threatened, I was like, oh God, if I can't do surgery, like I can't pay my bills, I'm the breadwinner. This is my entire identity. Who am I? That translated into severe insomnia for about 3 months. And then I had to just stop and figure everything out. And so
Good for you for having the courage to do that, because I think so many people don't reach that stopping point. And then the consequences, all the things that we see that happen to physicians, I don't know the stats, but I know it's significantly higher rates of suicide, substance abuse, all the things that we do to try to make ourselves feel whole or okay.
We're just trying, like if you think of substance abuse, that has a role because it's somebody trying to heal. Gabor Mate talks about substances. He's studied substance abuse. He studied heroin addicts. And there is not much difference between us and a heroin addict or an alcoholic, or we're just looking for something to feel better. And it's like, what is that substance doing for you? And so when we change it, we reframe it that way, you can start to see what the underlying problem is. And for me, it was definitely feeling like I was unworthy. I was unworthy. I didn't recognize the fact that I'm worthy just because I exist, just because I breathe, and everyone is. And so it was starting to recognize that and not only have awareness of it, but to believe it in your bones and in your soul. It took loving myself unconditionally, like finding a place where I'm like, I am sufficient where I am. Everything is okay. Once you find a place of sufficiency and okayness, like if you're at the bottom of a hole, and I was at the bottom of a hole emotionally, that is when you just have to find okay. You have to find the place where you are okay. And from there, you can start to slowly crawl your way out. And that's kind of what I did.
And I think it's brave that you were willing to share that, right? Because I would never have known that others have gone through the same experience. And we all have our different iterations of it. But really, it's like this ego death. It's like your identity is shifting. And, the spiritual community, they call it dark night of the soul, because you don't have the ability to grasp onto those things that we attached our identity to in the past and who are we becoming. And so it's kind of like you're in this in-between phase. You have very little support. It's scary to speak about it because nobody does until someone like you actually shares openly and opens the door for others. How did you help yourself find a way to find that internal love and compassion for yourself so you could show up in the way that you're meant to show up in the world?
It was a lot of unlearning. And like I said, I came from very little culture, so I didn't have a lot of attachment to stories about how the world works. So I'm very open to new interpretations. And once I learned coaching and I realized, oh, our thoughts create our feelings, like I'm not my thoughts. Thoughts are optional. We have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. We get to decide what we're going to believe and what we're not going to believe. And we show up completely differently when we believe one story versus another story. And those thoughts create feelings. Feelings drive actions. Actions produce results. And I was like, oh, I have complete control over all the results in my life. Like I don't have to have the result of suffering. That, in addition to integrity, where you have an alignment of the body, heart, mind, and spirit, is so healing. I realize that I have such a hard time with having a differentiation between who I am externally and who I am internally. I have to have alignment there. It was so hard for me even to like work. I was working through all of my suffering and showing up in clinic and just talking to patients, being like, hi, how are you? And like showing up to the OR, crying on my way to the OR, trying to wipe the tears from my face so I don't look like a psychopath. And then saying like, hey, I'm going to operate on you, and trying to look, make the patient feel comfortable. It was so challenging. And I'm sure people saw through it, but we're so well trained and I took such good care of patients and they have so much compassion back for me. Like I developed such close relationships with my patients that everybody, I took really excellent care of people. I was able to kind of step into my role as a surgeon and compartmentalize all of my suffering. But once I started to come through it and I came out the other side of it, I became a better doctor. Like I became such a good clinician, an efficient clinician, and such a good surgeon. I look at my last year. Last year was a lesson in capacity. I showed up to the clinic as like a diagnostician, like a diagnostic ninja. I gave people so much
phrase.
faith. Yeah. Like I connected with people like I've never connected before. I would meet someone for the first time. We'd spend 15 minutes together and I learned how to hold such space for people and be so authentically connected with them and super communicate with them that they would leave, whether or not I was going to operate on them or not, they would leave getting value and feeling so connected with me. And in the operating room, it was like so fun. Like my team had so much fun. I was efficient in the operating room. I had so much confidence. I tell my husband that I like went out like Seinfeld because I was like top of my game.
Isn't that such a good way to go out?
Yes.
And I do feel like that deeper connection with self gives you deeper connection with others.
Yes.
And it's such a cool thing to realize, because I think in medicine, we feel like we have to fit neatly into this little box, but we're not meant to fit into a box. We're all different. We all have these different skills and attributes and different motivations inside. And ultimately, we want to just do what's right for the person in front of us. But like when we try to make ourselves into this like standard prototype, I think we lose a lot of that. And it messes with our sense of identity. And I can relate so much. Like whenever you said, oh, I was crying going into the OR, I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, I've had those days. And I think we all have, but we just don't feel like we can talk about it.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about like anxiety or any human emotions. I mean,
Yeah.
we're taught to be robots. So I want us to understand, I want everyone to understand, your listenership to understand that we're taught to deny ourselves. We're taught to become a homogenous being to do a job safely and standardized, which makes sense. All these humans come in from different walks of life and you want them standardized. So they come in different and they all come out the same. But the problem with that is we lose ourselves. And so we're taught to not look inward. We're taught to only look outward. We're taught a transactional mindset. We're taught a student mindset, a trainee mindset, where we're always looking at an attending or someone outside of us to give us an answer. And we forget who we are. We lose who we are. And then we're thrown into the world and we're supposed to just kind of figure it out. And so what I try to help clients, what I did for myself was to take myself into like an expert mindset, into an asset mindset where you're like, I'm the asset. I matter. I'm my first patient. I have to take care of me. I have to take care of my human animal. I need to eat, sleep, rest, and play. And when I'm well resourced, I can resource patients and I can do this job sustainably.
I almost feel like I need somebody to bring me a pen because I should be taking notes right now. And I wish you were my coach when I was in medical training, because I beat myself up day and night. It's like your entire existence was validated by the outcome of a procedure. And we felt like the things that happened to patients, but we don't talk about them. And I realized I suppressed so much that came out after I left my first year of clinical practice. I was on a beach in Costa Rica after doing yoga teacher training. So of course, like you're going to go and search for all the things. And I had a moment where I was watching a sunset and I just started bawling like a baby. And I'm not a public crier. I'm the person that's going to wear the mask no matter what. And that comes from my conditioning over a lifetime. And it just all came out and I realized like, man, like there are so many experiences that we all share. And we are like high performance athletes at the end of the day. We're showing up to do life or death work. So high stakes, high performance with very, very little in terms of rest for ourselves, recovery. And it's almost like, should we integrate that into medical training? Like this whole idea of coaching for high performance?
Absolutely. I mean, because we're walking around with an unmanaged mind. And not only that, we come from, often many of us come from toxic residency programs and toxic training systems. And there's a culture of disconnection and authority where I'm up here, I'm the ego in the white coat. The patient has
I love
to,
that phrase. Can you tell us more about that ego in the white coat?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's the culture's idea of who we should be. We should have all the answers. It's like not the beginner's mind, it's the expert's mind. We are higher than our patients. We are worth more because we know more, because we went to 4 years of medical school and 5+ years of training. And so we should know everything. And it's a lot. It's a lot on our shoulders. That as opposed to, I don't know any more about my patient's body than they do. I only have a little bit of information. I trained during a time that I was given the information I was given. If I trained 100 years ago, we'd be bloodletting people. So I don't know what a century from now people are going to look at what we're doing and say, wow, that's really crazy. And so I have this information from this period of time. I can offer it to them, but it is not my role to shove it down their throat. I am no better than them. We are all just on equal footing. And when you take it from that idea when you're like, oh, I'm at the same level as my patients. I'm at the same level as everyone. I'm not special. I'm a regular human. I'm not a superhuman. Then you're like, it's so freeing. That is kind of like the first realization that people have to have, because we come out of it feeling like we should be superhuman because we're treated as if we're superhuman. Everyone around us is like, we're superhuman. You get a badge of honor if you don't sleep, if you show up early, if you stay late, if you do something super hard.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
It's like when we don't sleep, we're basically intoxicated, but we don't drink a bottle of wine before we do a case. So why are we showing up without like 3 days of sleep, right?
It's crazy.
And I think the public actually doesn't know that your physician can be up all night doing an emergency procedure and still show up the next day to do an elective case. And, in the aviation industry, there are all these regulations. So how is it that a single life on the table doesn't have that same kind of structure to protect the patient and also the person who's doing the procedure? Because again, anything that happens as a result of that, there's that moral injury that comes with it. And I remember there was a time in my first year of practice where I was on call for so many days in succession, going in the middle of the night, and then expected to show up the next day to do elective procedures. And I was thinking, okay, I'm the young woman interventionalist. I make up less than 5% of the workforce, and all my male partners are showing up to do it. So if I speak up, like, am I going to be considered the weak one? But I was truly, like, internally feeling like, what if something happens and it's because I'm too tired and I'm exhausted? And I just couldn't really live with that. And I just wonder, like, how do we shift that in our system? How do we make that better?
As you're saying that, I'm thinking of a time when I had to go in the middle of the night and I was on call and I had cases the next day. And I made the executive decision, and I was able to call the anesthesiologist and say, hey, you're going to have to push back my OR. I am not showing up for 7:30 start. Like, I need a couple extra hours of sleep for me to be ready. And
it's okay to do that.
It's fine. My patients were like, thank you.
Yeah.
I started my OR late and they were like, thank you so much for making sure that you get rest.
And I think the patients are so understanding and they're so gracious. And really, at the end of the day, they care about their physicians too. Like, it's a relationship that we build on trust. And so I think we forget that we can actually lean on that.
Yeah, and I think it takes all of us deciding not to be overachieving people pleasers who follow rules and to start to bend the rules like I did. Like, it starts with one person. If everybody is pushing back OR and saying, I refuse to operate on 2 hours of sleep, I refuse to operate on 4 hours of sleep on elective cases. If everyone's doing that, then it's not going to be the norm anymore.
So we're saying it's no longer a badge of honor.
Yes.
I love that. I wonder if this is like an imbalance in like the polarities, and everybody has like masculine and feminine traits within them, right? I think we all have like different qualities that make us who we are. But medicine historically has been a very male-dominated field. And I think the feminine perspective is a little bit different. And I'm not trying to generalize that women are a certain way and men are a certain way, but I almost feel like whenever you bring a more balanced perspective, you start to notice like, hey, this doesn't have to be done in this way. And it's not this hyper competitive environment. It's actually more of like a solution finding, how do we make this fit and actually feel good as well kind of situation.
Yeah, I know, you're so right. And I coach both men and women, and I see the difference between the genders. I looked at all of my clientele. The majority of the men that I coach do not deal with imposter syndrome. I've had
so
one male physician who has dealt with it, one male surgeon who has dealt with imposter syndrome. The majority of my female clients deal with imposter syndrome, 98%.
Yeah. And I think there are real gender differences. And I've noticed that in my work in the interventional cardiology and in structural intervention, there's a difference in how we kind of problem solve. And it's interesting how the data, I don't know if you want to mention that paper that was in, was it the New England Journal or which
that women surgeons have better outcomes.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see that. And when I was in fellowship, I almost felt like people were like, oh, Priya's hesitating or she's pausing. Whereas, my colleagues would kind of just go for it and then kind of react to whatever happens. And I almost wonder if that pause before acting is one of those differences, but I feel like I can't generalize that.
Yeah, no, there is like a confidence, and I think there's a middle place that we can all arrive at.
Yeah.
With men, often I'm noticing more have just so much confidence, and it's really hard to shake their confidence.
Have you seen that meme that's like, give me 1% of the male doctor's confidence?
Seriously.
I felt like that every single day.
But women don't. And it's like the imposter is not a safe way to show up, but we're so good and we're so amazing at what we do that women surgeons have better outcomes. And it's probably because we care so much and we go the extra mile and we're double checking and triple checking because we're dealing with, an imposter within us that says that we don't have the skills when we actually do. versus somebody who's just cavalier and overconfident. But there is a middle place, and I talk to all my clients about this, about dualism, where you're showing up with the intention to create 100% perfect surgical outcomes for every single patient you meet, while also knowing that you cannot do that, that's an impossibility. But having that belief that you will is how you change how you show up.
I love that. It's like the duality in medicine that exists on so many different planes. And it's like applying that in a way where you actually impact how a patient does.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
It's strategic detachment. And I mean, everybody does that in sports, where if you have a $5 million purse and you're trying to hit a putt, you're not going to sit there and think about the stakes and get in your own head. So it's like the fact that the stakes are so high is the exact reason why we need to have a managed mind, and we need to practice strategic detachment and have the courage to detach ourselves.
This kind of brings me to my next topic. Whenever we talk about how we perform in our roles as doctors, surgeons, interventionalists, proceduralists, there's this unspoken sense of doing something in the cath lab or in the OR. It's like the gut feeling, clinical intuition.
Yeah.
I would love to get into that with you.
Totally.
So what are your thoughts on clinical intuition? What is it?
It is your nervous system's ability to interpret patterns before your brain can. Our brain processes 40 bits of information per second. Our body processes 11 million bits of information per second. So our body knows before our brain. And sometimes we can't understand it fully, but I have made so many decisions based on intuition. I knew my husband was my person within 3 months. I had known him hardly at all. Okay. But there was a moment I was staring into his eyes, and I swear I was like staring into his soul. And I was like, I saw the ocean blue of his eyes, and I was just like, this is my guy. And that was 12 years ago. We've been married for 11 years now. We have 2 kids, and he's still my favorite person in the whole wide world. The day I bought our house, we put in over asking, and that was the only house we looked at. And I was like, this is our house. I can be very decisive when my intuition knows, and that was the best financial investment we've ever made. But similarly, in the clinic, I can feel in my body. It's a very specific feeling when I know what the right decision is for a patient, and I'm very honest with them. And it's also a very specific feeling when I know it's not the right decision. And so I tell them, and I've followed my intuition. I've gone against it. I've gone with it. And when I go against it, it's almost always comes back to bite me.
I started getting that feeling during procedures, like even walking into the ER sometimes during a STEMI. So heart attack patient comes in, even before I look at all the physical objective data, it's like this feeling of kind of knowing. And when you're doing procedures, you actually get a sense of, okay, this is a good point to stop or keep going in this direction or escalate. I don't think our brain can actually process that amount of information in a split second. It's like you said, it's this like sensing of other things. And I've had mentors that told me the differentiator between somebody who reaches their full potential as a surgeon or a proceduralist is that ability to listen into that intuition. But how do we find trust in that inner voice? And also, should we be talking about this in medical education, like that gut feeling, the art of medicine?
We don't talk about it, and we also teach the exact opposite of it. This is flipping everything on its head. It's flipping vertical hierarchies to horizontal hierarchies. It's flipping ignoring your body. I mean, the way that we're taught is that we're just a brain, and our body is just meant to carry us around, to take care of patients. Or if you're a surgeon, you're a brain and hands. And ignore your body. You don't listen to the cues of your body. If you have to pee, you ignore that.
Oh yeah. God forbid you take a sip of water between cases, because what if you need to pee?
Yeah, and if you're hungry, too bad. Don't eat. Don't get to eat. You're told to completely disconnect from your body. So then how are you supposed to start listening to the signals of your body after training? Is my question. And so we have to start teaching people to listen to their body, not by telling them to, but by creating situations where they're able to.
It's like creating safety around feeling.
Safety around it, yeah.
I think we tend to over-intellectualize without truly being present in the body. And it's something I didn't even fully understand until I quit my corporate job after 15 years of medical training, went to yoga teacher training. And for the first time, I started feeling sensations like constriction in the body. Like, what does it feel like whenever something is a no for me? What does it feel like when I feel very connected to something? I never even knew that there was value in that.
Yeah, and the body is such a great truth and lie detector. It's very simplified. When it's yes, it feels open, it feels free, it feels ready to engage. When it's a no, it's like tight, it's icky, it's awful. Mm-hmm. But that also being said, I mean, because I have such life experience, I still deal with so much anxiety where my human animal is freaking out whenever I'm on a stage or I'm doing something like this.
I would never guess that about you. Your talks are just mind-blowing because like we were talking about before we started recording, it's like we spend most of our life in the OR or in a cath lab with our 3 closest friends, the tech, the nurse, and the patient. and we don't really put ourselves out there. So could you tell us how you did that and how you did that in such an effective and meaningful way?
Yeah, I decided the most healing thing for me would be to tell my story and to just say everything authentically, truthfully, and without giving any Fs. And so I started.
Can we say with an open heart?
With an open heart, yes. And yeah, so I started a podcast and I was like, I'm just going to say it all. I'm just going to lay it all out there. And that was the most healing thing. And I think that might be a big starting point for a lot of physicians who are struggling is start telling your story, be witnessed in your truth with a compassionate person that loves you unconditionally. Or you can do it with an entire audience and start a podcast.
I just got full body goosebumps when you said that.
So it's just so healing. You know, it's like we all need that. And so I decided that's what I'm going to do. And then once I started the podcast and I was like, okay, I can do that. I can create safety around that. I didn't die. I was like, let me just see if I can stand on a stage. I was like, let me do a TED Talk. And these are all just me trying to go outside my comfort zone and show my human animal, like my little internal child, like, listen, it's safe. The world is safe, because she thinks the world is very unsafe. And so I'm starting to try to show her, like, people are generally good. You are safe. You can go out. You can say your truth. Nobody's going to harm you. No one's going to kill you. And it's creating safety around just like existing.
And you mentioned something about safety in medical training in some of your conversations that you share. And it's hard, right? Because you are in this hierarchical system. You're kind of at the mercy of the person you're attached to at the hip for many hours, for many days, for years, actually. And how do you cultivate an environment where it's okay to talk about that safety? And if you feel unsafe, to speak up.
It's realizing that we are all just on equal footing. Like even the attending who believes that they are just as worthy as a human in their human worthiness as an intern, they have to believe that. Sure, they have more value in that they have more experience, they know more, but in their worthiness, they have to get very humble and really step into that humble leadership so that every level feels safe to say whatever, because everybody's opinion matters. Even, you know, the person who, the scrub tech, the person who's washing the instruments, if everyone feels safe to kind of speak up in an operating room setting, that creates so much safety. It's so much safer for the patient versus somebody who thinks that they know all the answers. They're running the show. They're the captain of the ship. And anybody who says anything against what their plan is going to be, you know, berated or have an instrument thrown at them.
That's like the retaliatory.
Yeah, that's not safe for patients.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I've had so many cases where I benefit from the wisdom of the cath lab tech who's next to me and have been doing this for 30 years. It's like, yeah, I did 15 years of training, but like I've only been in practice for 2 years. And if you know something I don't know, please let me know. And we had an example would be, I had a patient in cardiac arrest come in and we're all moving very quickly. We're working as fast as we can. The EKG suggested one territory. So I'm kind of focused there looking at the angiogram, like, what's going on? And it was this very subtle finding, but it was a high diagonal branch that was actually pretty small and usually doesn't present with cardiac arrest. But the tech was like, I've seen this one other time and I think that there's something there. And sure enough, that's what it was. And so it's just like, I love getting that feedback and people feel empowered and they also feel like they're doing what they're meant to do. Like they're there for a reason. They're there to share their wisdom. And I think once we open that dialogue, people really see that this is a beautiful field that we work in. It is so cool, the job that we get to do.
It is so cool. And it's a very results oriented. I think that's what we forget is like, what's the result we're trying to create? We're trying to help this patient. We're trying to serve a patient. Who cares where it comes from? Like, who cares if you're the one who has the idea or diagnoses the thing, or if the janitor does? Like, it doesn't matter who comes up with the plan or who identifies the thing. Like, as long as the patient has the result, it's all okay. Like, that is the ego death.
I love that so much. And it's also like finding joy in the environment that we work in. It's like finding joy with your team, finding joy within yourself. Like my favorite cases are the ones where, and you would never expect this, right? The people they're in the worst moment of their lives, super vulnerable. We move very quickly. And whenever the patient is leaving the cath lab, like waving their arms in the air, singing the song that we're playing, and we're like, please keep your wrist down. We went through your artery by your wrist. Those are my favorite moments because it's like, that's an energetic exchange. And that's something that the whole team does. It's like a harmony or a dance. And I feel like it's possible. And I feel like it's so important to empower people like, hey, it's okay to be that way in medicine.
Yeah, no, that's the thing that all of my clients tell me too, once they kind of get through their own suffering, is like their favorite part of being a surgeon is the connecting with the patients. We're a connecting species. We're a tribal species. We're social primates. We got into this to serve patients. We get very lost in wanting to have the skill and being the one who has the answer, but none of that matters.
And I do have a question for you about diversifying your skill set as a person in medicine. Like, as I've been branching out into doing new things, I've realized that there are a lot of people in medicine that have all these hidden talents, and they're kind of afraid, and I say they, but I also mean myself, we're kind of afraid to put ourselves out there in that way because it feels like there may not be space for that, or how do I possibly consider, deviating from like the usual path? What is your advice to someone who's going through that kind of transition?
To diversify as soon as you possibly can, because it creates freedom. You're going to leave your job. Like, you're going to retire or something's going to happen. Maybe, God forbid, you have a catalytic event. I just interviewed Stephanie Pearson, who is the CEO of Pearson Rabbits, which is a disability insurance company for physicians. And she was an OBGYN. She's an OBGYN by training, but 12 years ago, she was kicked in the shoulder and was rendered unable to do surgery anymore. And so she had to leave the profession all of a sudden. It was a catalytic event that she did not expect, and it sent her into an emotional spiral. And you don't have to do that if you're ready. If we're prepared, if we're like, oh, this is just one of my many hats that I wear, I can burn this career to the ground. I can just light a match to it, and I am not attached to it. It's that idea of detachment where you're like, this does not define me. We spend so much time defining ourselves as doctors and as my clients, as surgeons, but as physicians, if we can detach ourselves from that identity and to diversify ourselves in other ways, specifically by finding what fascinates us, which fascination is just attention without effort. So if you have something that you can pay attention to without effort and you can lose yourself into a flow state, like, definitely go towards that. And to me, it was like creating content and thinking about my clients and coaching. I could do it all the time. But for some people, it's writing, it could be speaking, it could be playing an instrument, it could be drawing, or it could be anything. But it typically should be something in the creative. It should be creating something. We want to like engage that creative part of the brain.
I love that you mentioned flow state. And ever since I started having less of that grasp of control, I'm forcing this outcome and just followed that inner sense of what brings me joy, what makes me feel whole, what do I get lost in? It's like all the pieces just kind of like fall into place, right? I've never been a podcast host. This is like my second day of filming. And I asked you, please be patient with me as I figure this out.
You're doing amazing.
Thank you. You're so kind. You're the person I needed in training and my first year of practice and now. So I'm grateful I found you. But it's really like once I started getting into that flow state, the pieces just kind of magically appear. It's like it comes basically just as needed, and we have to put in the effort, of course, but it just feels like life just flows in such a harmonious and beautiful way. And on the surface, people are like, oh, what is she doing? It's so different. But inside, I feel like this is the happiest and most aligned I've ever been. And so it really tells you that the external validation doesn't have to match your internal state. And as long as you feel good here, you reflect it out into the world.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it's the impact too. And like having an impact where you're serving others is really beautifully internally motivating versus having like wanting to make money or climb the academic ladder. That's very empty. We overvalue those things, the power, the status, and the wealth. But what really matters is what internally motivates us, and serving others is the best thing. And when we are self-focused and trying to get something for ourselves, that always leads to anxiety. And so it's getting our mindset back into like, I'm here to serve. Like, I'm here to have an impact. I'm going to have an impact on the world. I'm here to connect. That feels so much better when you're doing things and you're creating things in the world for that reason versus like, I'm doing this so that I get an A+ or a gold star or
I love that.
$1 million or whatever. Right?
And that's actually been one of the things that I've been practicing, and some of it comes from your work that I've watched. And it's more of coming into this mindset of what is my intention walking into this conversation or this case? What is the goal? Who am I trying to help with this? What am I trying to learn? How am I trying to grow? And once you start to shift that away from like, how am I performing into how am I helping this person? It changes everything.
It takes you out of perfectionism. And that was what got me going with like my podcast. I was like, if it helps one person, it's worth it.
Can you tell us about the podcast?
Yeah. So Surgeons with Purpose is the podcast. And the first episode is about imposter syndrome. The next one is about anxiety in the OR. But I talk about all of the things that we don't typically talk about, all the conversations we should be having as surgeons. I tell my whole story about insomnia and panic attacks in the operating room. I even talk about being raped in residency. I talk about all of the things, all of the secrets, and just lay them out to be seen. And
I think it's so brave and so valuable what you're doing. And I hope one day that your conversations are part of a medical curriculum, because I think it's so vital in our world.
It's so interesting because it's really flipping everything on its head. And so enticing people and compelling them to walk this path with me, I get is really hard because it's like, you're saying the opposite of everything I've learned.
But we all get here from our experience. It's like when you live this life and you've had these experiences and you put it out there, you realize you're not alone. It resonates.
It resonates, and it's like, it feels like the truth of the universe. And I can say that I applied this to my life as a surgeon, operating on patients, seeing patients in clinic, and it made my life easier. So it's like, this is not just theoretical. This is applied theory that has been put to the test, and it actually works. Like, the flipping of the narrative actually works.
Well, I think you're changing the landscape of medicine, and it kind of goes beyond high performers within the medical field. It's pretty much any field that you go into. I think a lot of us struggle with these fundamental issues, and so it is just so beautiful to see someone like you sharing that story. And I just hope you know you've made a huge impact on my journey.
I'm so glad.
And I'm still
happy to hear.
so early on the journey, and so I'm really excited to know you and have your podcast as a resource, your coaching services as a resource. I just think the work that you're doing is incredible, and I really hope to see more of that in the medical world.
Yeah, well, thank you, Priya. I'm so excited for your podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, and the open heart concept, it was really about sharing the things that we don't learn in textbooks that we all feel or think or experience, and just coming with an open mind and curiosity, but not necessarily telling people, hey, this is what you need to believe, but if it resonates, look into it. There's a reason for it.
I mean, what you know about the body and like with yoga and everything, like it really is a feeling state. Like when we know the truth, there's so many things that I talk about that come from like Buddhism and the Tao Te Ching and all of these things that have been around for centuries and centuries. There's a reason why it spans continents and it spans different generations, because it's true. And that's why it feels so true. It feels like the truth of the universe because it is. And it feels awful when we're doing the opposite because it's not the truth.
It is, absolutely. And I think science and soul have somewhat gotten disconnected. And now it feels like it's so important to find our way back, and not in a way that's polarized. We don't have to talk about religion or specific beliefs, but it's just this knowing as people that are connected to each other.
You're exactly right about not wanting to like otherize other people, because that's what I want to do. Like my next level is trying to bring in people who really believe opposite of what I believe, bring in some of the toxic attendings that are like throwing instruments in the operating room and hear their story and hold space for them. It's kind of like villain compassion.
Yeah.
Because I think if we do it the opposite way and we're like, oh, the system's bad, and point our finger at the system, we're now disempowering ourselves and feeling like a victim again. So it's like, can we not be judgmental towards the people who don't get it yet and not get on our high horse and say like, oh, well, I understand how the world works now, but instead just like have compassion for all of the people, whatever level they're at and whatever they believe.
I love what you said, and I just got like full body chills, which is like my yes. And I think that is so important. And I love that you use holding space and compassion and using these like very positive energies towards something that's a very difficult experience, but it shifts everything once you start doing that. And you realize like that person also had a story. It doesn't make the behaviors okay, but at least it's like you're opening up the conversation and it's balanced, and there can be change that comes from it.
Yeah. Can you find love for the attending who threw an instrument at you? You're like, can you? Because that is not a 50-year-old man. Like that is probably a intern who is showing up in the form of a 50-year-old man.
Yeah,
a scared
frozen,
child.
like frozen inside.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's like, it's kind of wild. If you can see people in that state as they're going through these motions of the human experience, it shifts everything.
Yeah, it's like it opens your eyes and you're just like, oh, you're hurting.
Yeah.
And you find that compassion for that person versus like taking it personally and feeling offended.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any final message that you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, just find unconditional love for yourself. Like, this is the human experience. Wherever you are, like, find sufficiency. You can't get anywhere until you are sufficient and okay. Once you find sufficiency, no matter what you're trying to do, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to change some sort of habit, you have to be sufficient and be like, I am okay. Nothing has gone wrong. All is well. And from there, that's when you can start to change from desire. It can't come from I have to. It has to come from I choose to.
That's beautiful. And our closing message will be, what does it mean to live with an open heart for you?
Ooh. Yeah, I think it means like really connecting the front stage and backstage self and living in integrity of body, heart, mind, and soul, and just showing up the same no matter where you are. Like showing up the same for my patients as I do for my friends, as I do for my family, as I do for my boss, and not changing who I am as I do here.
Well, thank you for everything that you do. And I just love hearing your messages and just seeing your example of how you show up in the world. I really hope I can talk you into having another conversation with me at some point, because we have so much to cover, and I know your podcast is incredible, and I would love to continue following you on that journey as well. So thank you so much.
I'll have to bring you on my podcast as well.
Thank you. Mel, thank you for bringing such truth and courage to this conversation. For those listening, I invite you to reflect. What would shift if you trusted your own intuition? In the operating room, in your work, in your life? Remember, leadership doesn't have to mean control. It can mean curiosity, safety, and joy. Until next time, stay open, stay grounded, and keep asking the deeper questions. This is Priya Rao, signing off.